That's our position, that's our opinion. If this was the regular Joe down the street, this case would never even have gone to trial. No prosecutor would have taken this case to trial. It was ridiculous. There was no direct evidence linking him to anything, right? And so it's a shame that we're here. I feel it's completely disgraceful. Some of you have been here. You followed me with this case. I've always said the same thing. This has been disgraceful. I was born in the United States, but I grew up in a developing nation. This is the sort of prosecution you see in developing nations. People are mad. Prosecute a person. They prosecute a person. This shouldn't be happening in the United States of America. It's ridiculous.
Nenye,
yes.
Have you spoken with Jussie, and what's his reaction to this?
Well, of course, he's relieved. I think the emotion I would describe is one of relief, and he's very happy and, of course, grateful to the Supreme Court for their decision and for, not to be condescending in any way, doing the right thing. I mean, that's what the court is supposed to do. That's why we have this process. But I think also we should remember that he's a human being. And like any other human being, I'm not a psychologist, but I'll wager there will be a feeling of mixed emotions, the emotion of happiness, the emotion of relief, but still the disappointment that you were dragged through an unfair process. And I think that's the best way I'll capture how he feels. Please.
What's going to happen next? What options does Jussie have at his disposal?
Yeah.
Is he considering filing a suit against the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, Dan Webb's office?
Yeah.
Is there an action he's planning?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of waste of taxpayers' money, hasn't there been, right? We've spent who knows how much. I don't even think there was a process where we could see how much the special prosecutor has spent on the case, because it's Cook County taxpayers' dimes going into that. And so we don't know. So I think at this point, Jussie wants to move on with his life. And he had already started doing that. I think this is a chapter, it's closed behind him. It's unfortunate what happened to him. He was railroaded. This was a travesty. And I think the truth eventually comes out. And that's what we're seeing here today.
Would you like to see
An
an apology?
apology? I'm sure Jussie would want an apology, but he's a realistic man, right? He knows he's not going to get it. After all, these are the same prosecutors that prosecuted a case, the special prosecutor's office, that they shouldn't have been prosecuting.
The city is seeking, I think there's a pending civil trial to get restitution from Jussie. Do you believe the city should drop that?
Well, listen, I'm not the civil attorney involved in that case, but I would say our main focus right now is on the Supreme Court's decision. I think everyone should take the time. It's a long decision, it's 32 pages, but they should take the time to read and see how the Supreme Court systematically calls out the various injustices that took place in this case. I think that should be the focus, and not on what's happening in some civil case or potentially what the city should be doing. I think the focus should be on the Supreme Court in a 5-0 decision. No dissent, not one person dissenting, not one person faltering, says, this is wrong. And I think that should really be the focus. And I hope and I'm confident that he'll get his life back, as he has already started doing right now.
You mentioned a lot about public opinion, facts getting to the public. Do you think that this decision will impact the public's view of this case or of Jussie's perceived innocence or guilt?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the media and what you guys report. If you guys leave here today and you are reporting what Dan Webb is saying, that this is just a verdict on a technicality, which would be a disservice, well, of course the public will still feel that way. But if you report on the truth, if you report on what the Supreme Court said, that this was an unfair proceeding, if you look through the transcripts, and I don't know if some of you have, and now finally go back to sit down with the transcripts and start looking at a guy called maybe Anthony Moore, what he had to say, right? And start reading through the transcripts and maybe do a documentary. I don't know, but I think it depends. The ball is in the media's court. When this case first started, I told the media, I told a lot of you, I said, listen, just give him a chance. Look through the evidence. Don't assume he's guilty. Do some investigative journalism. Interview these witnesses. No one wanted to do it. We're all human beings. We all go with the flow sometimes. So I hope corrective measure will be taken now, and the media actually does and acts like the fourth arm of government to hold checks and balances. And Mr. Webb was in an executive position. He was a prosecutor, and everyone allowed him to do what he wanted to do on a case that he shouldn't have been prosecuting in the first place.
Does Jussie have a message for the people of Chicago at this stage? Does he have something he wants us all to know?
Jussie's a very kind man. He's always loved Chicago. He just wants to move on with his life. He just wants he goes between New York and LA. Okay.
Sure, can you just one more time?
Yeah.
Most of us don't have law degrees, certainly like
Yeah.
The court
No, it's
of
okay.
public's opinion is exactly that. But
Yeah.
can you drill down just a little further between, what I've seen a lot of people asking today, this was alluded to up here, that does this answer to his innocence? Would you try the case the same way? Is he going to, does he stand behind the reason he called 911 in the first place and got the 911 camera when we all waited through the trial,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera?
Yep.
But can you drill down a little further as an attorney
Yes.
between
Yeah.
due process violations
Yes.
and your client's
Correct.
presumption of
Correct.
innocence?
So let's start with one thing. Let's get one thing straight. Jussie Smollett has always maintained his innocence, and he continues to do so till date. Let's put that aside. Number two, you've asked me a question, which is an important question. How would you try this case if we were to go back? This case should never have gone to court. This case should never have been tried, right? There is no evidence, in our opinion, and based on the facts that we saw, against Jussie Smollett, and he's maintained that innocence. And more importantly, we have a situation where the Illinois Supreme Court pretty quickly, remember oral arguments were in September, I believe September 17 or 18, and now we're in November, all right? And they've come out unanimously to say this was an unfair proceeding. So what I would like the public to understand is you cannot derive good from bad. You cannot say, hey, the proceeding is unfair, but we're going to believe hook, line, and sinker everything that came from the proceeding. It doesn't work that way.
Nenye, did this attack take place the way that Jussie reported it to police in 2019? Was he attacked? Was there an attack on Jussie Smollett?
Listen, Jussie Smollett has always maintained his innocence. He's always said that this happened to him, right? And we believe the evidence that was put forward in court, we believe there was a lot of reasonable doubt shown, and that's what I will say. But I think, again, we're back to this web that we got caught in when this case first started. I think the real focus should be on the 32 pages of a unanimous decision, a court that wasn't divided. I think that should be the real focus.
Should this all come back to the original agreement between the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and Mr. Smollett with regard to the decision to prosecute in the first place?
Yeah, well, obviously, I think that was a large part of the opinion, right? But I think it should come down to the fact that this case should never have been prosecuted, that Cook County should have better spent its money, and that this money shouldn't have been used on a bad prosecution. Again, I'll emphasize, this was a vindictive persecution. This was no prosecution. And so that's our position. Okay?
Anything else you'd like to share that we haven't already asked?
Well, I mean that's really the main. I think the opinion speaks for itself. I think it's a lot, but it's in plain English as to what the court feels about this. And I'll just ask everybody to remember, I cannot emphasize this enough. This was not a divided court. This was a unanimous decision. I think Mr. Allen wants to say something, and then Heather.
Okay. I think a lot has been said. Yes. Oh, Shay Allen is S-H-A-Y. Hello, everyone. I think a lot has been said already. I don't know how much more I can add. Only that I'm very ecstatic that the Supreme Court finally came or brought this case to where it should be. This case should have never gotten to this point. I think I said this when Jussie was released from the jail when I was out there. I said, none of us will want this to happen to us, that you make a deal with the prosecutor, that you have an agreement, and then they just take that agreement back and say, no, that's okay, and someone else comes to prosecute you. You don't want that to happen. So the Supreme Court made the right decision, Supreme Court did the right thing, and they were united in that. So I think Jussie should be vindicated. I think everyone should now take a step back and really understand what happened here, that this was just an unfair prosecution, a persecution. And we're really glad that it came to this point.
One last question, and anyone can answer it. If this from your mouth, is a vindictive, this was a vindictive process, who are you talking to? Who are you talking about? Cook County, City of Chicago Police Department, the people at City Hall at the time? Just to be specific about about why this would be called a vindictive case.
I think it's,
I'll give your names.
oh, Heather Waddell. Heather common spelling. Waddell is Widell. I think who we're talking to is the people who should know better. The special prosecutor on down. Every single part of this prosecution, everyone should have known better. Legal scholars, all of us, none of us are surprised by the Supreme Court's ruling today at all, because this is a long-held rule of law. Like Mr. Allen just said, it is a long-held contract law. When you enter into an agreement and you rely on that agreement to your detriment, the other side has to hold its part, you have to hold your part. They didn't, and now we're here where we are today, finally, with the just conclusion of the longest standing rule of law. And we should all be very excited for that, because that means that there is justice, that the rule of law holds in this land, and that we all won't be subject to persecutions rather than prosecutions that are appropriate to the rule of law.
Did he complete his community service during the initial agreement? I mean, because, and is he obligated to continue with the terms of that initial agreement? In other words, could he have to come back here to complete the community service?
No, that entire proceeding has been thrown out. So everything else that is attached to it, he doesn't pay any fines, he doesn't pay, at least within the criminal proceeding, no restitution, he doesn't do anything. That entire proceeding has been deemed null and void by the court.
I think what we're talking about is the original agreement between.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And,
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, what the city of Chicago took his fine and kept it. They've always had his fine, right? And as to the so it's obviously our position, and the Supreme Court took that same position, that he met the terms of that obligation. He completed everything, so he can't do something he's already done already. Okay.
And the community service?
Yes, all that has been completed according to the transcripts, according to the court proceedings.
And just so we're abundantly clear, obviously they cannot come back and retry him on any of this because it would be double jeopardy. But is there some loophole where they could come back and try to do something else?
I mean, nothing surprises me, right? So I mean, at this stage, listen, it's over. I think there should be a call to end the madness. I think a lot of taxpayer money has been spent for what? Nothing. For ridiculousness. So I think it should be over, and I'm sure the Special Prosecutor's Office is legally mature enough to know what to do next.
Obviously, the appeal in the sentence just goes away automatically, or you have to file a motion?
Oh, it goes away automatically. There's instructions to the lower court, trial court. I think we're done. Okay.
Everybody done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.